Latin America sees growing opportunities with China in the face of an escalating US-China trade war. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. You may have seen the news. The US is imposing trade tariffs against China, the European Union, and Japan. It is renegotiating the North America Free Trade Agreement with Mexico and Canada, and in the process, changing the global trading system as we know it. But for some countries, this may present an opportunity. In Latin America, a region that trades heavily with the United States, a tit-for-tat trade war is opening the Latin American market even further as countries like China look for new places to fill the gaps left behind by its US imports. So how might a US trade war strengthen ties between China and Latin America? Here now to discuss this, Wenyuan Wu is in Miami. She's the author of the new book, Chinese Oil Enterprises in Latin America. From Rio de Janeiro, Mauricio Santoro is head of the Department of International Relations at the State University of Rio de Janeiro. From Shanghai, Haibin Niu is Deputy Director of the Center for American Studies at Shanghai Institutes for International Studies. And with us in the studio, Farnsworth is Vice President of the Council of the Americas and the Americas Society. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Wenyuan Wu, let me start with you. Well, we're all familiar with these trade tensions between China and the United States, each side imposing tariffs on the other. How much of an opportunity do you think this presents for Latin America to expand its trade ties with China?
Yes, so to Latin America, China really offers a total package for intensifying trade linkages and upgrading investment. China is already the region's second most important trade partner as of now, and the trade relations between China and Latin America will continue to warm up as China and Panama enter their official negotiation for a free trade agreement. China is also considering to start a free trade agreement with Colombia. In terms of multilateral agreements, Mexico, Peru, and Chile have already expressed interest in entering the Beijing-led Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. On the other hand, Xi Jinping at the latest APEC Leaders Summit have proposed constructing a free trade area between Asia and Pacific as an important vehicle to advance the integration between China and Latin America.
Mauricio, what do you make of China's outreach to Latin America? Do Latin American countries have to go through some kind of balancing act here, balancing their relationships with China as well as the United States?
Well, hello, good afternoon. Well, I think that Brazil is a pretty typical history in Latin America in the last years. The United States used to be our biggest trade partner, but that changed in 2009. Now China is number one, and China's economic presence in Brazil is increasing fast, especially through investments in mining, energy, and agriculture. So for many economic sectors in Brazil, the trade war between the United States and China and European Union and the NAFTA countries, they can give us some opportunities, especially from Brazilian agribusiness sector. But we are also concerned about the instability to global trade. Brazil is still facing a serious economic and political crisis, and this instability is not good for us.
Haibin Niu, if we look at the relationship that the United States and China has with Latin America, their trading relationship is very different, isn't it? Because China imports mainly raw materials from Latin America, doesn't it?
Yes, and because both China and Latin America have enjoyed different comparative advantages. China has exported a lot of manufacturing products to Latin America, and also there is a different comparative advantages between the United States and Latin American countries. A lot of manufacturing products made by the Latin American countries are exported to the United States. So I think the three sides enjoy the different positions in the global value chains. So, all three sides should make efforts to keep this kind of trilateral economic cooperation going on. To make and also I think both China and Latin America are making efforts to move up their positions in these value chains, and also they have done a lot of jobs on this regard, like to promoting the role of the mutual investment and the innovation cooperation to change the picture to make it more balanced.
Eric, looking at China's expanding relationship with Latin America, what's the view from the United States? How much of a priority is it for the United States, Latin America?
I think it depends on who you talk to in the United States. You'll get different views. By and large, most people are accepting of the fact that Latin America should be able to trade and invest with whomever they want to, subject to the rules of international trade, et cetera. And there is a recognition that China is a growing economy and needs markets and needs places to sell its own goods and also to import from. So from a commercial perspective, I think there's broad recognition that this is a relationship that's going to develop into the future the way it's in some ways developed in the past. There are implications of this, though, and I think that's where some in the United States begin to get a little bit wary with some of the values set that Chinese investment may bring to Latin America in terms of some corruption activities or intellectual property or some of the things that are challenges globally. You'll hear that from time to time from officials in the United States. You'll also hear a concern about balance in trade. And Anand, you raised this already in this conversation, which is to say that Latin America is a massive exporter of commodities to China and a massive importer of finished products from China. Now, that's not bad, but in the context of economic development, it doesn't necessarily help economies go up the value-added chain or help them develop their manufacturing economy or such things. So that balance in trade is something that has also drawn a little bit of concern from observers. And I think as Latin America and China increase their economic relationships, that's an issue that will have to attract some attention to make sure it doesn't become a political issue going forward.
Right. Wenyuan Wu, how diverse is China's investment in the countries of Latin America? At one time, that kind of investment was largely confined to Chinese public enterprises investing in energy projects, gas and petroleum and things like that.
Yes, so we will see a total broadening of Chinese investments in new sectors and new territories in Latin America. Last year alone, among the 5 official Chinese loans to Latin America, there was only 1 oil loan, and the rest went to the renewable infrastructure and finances. And there were also a huge surge of private investments in terms of high technology, agriculture, and tech services. The Chinese company Shenzhen Invento built a news app in Mexico last year, and also we saw a lot of greenfield Chinese investment. Almost half went to finances, real estate, infrastructure, and renewables.
Mauricio, we've just had the BRICS summit taking place in South Africa. That was just a couple of weeks ago. Brazil and China, of course, members of BRICS. Does that help in trade between, say, Brazil and China?
Well, it helps a lot because Brazil sees BRICS nowadays as one of its most important foreign policy tools. And one of the debates that we're having now, this is an election year in Brazil, is how foreign policy can help Brazil to overcome the serious economic crisis that we are facing. And of course, that China is a very important trade partner, is also a very important source of foreign direct investment in Brazil. But there is also the concern about this big imbalance in the trade, as we were discussing right now. Brazil basically exports to China soy, iron ore, and oil. and it imports a big amount of products, but mostly manufactured products. And there is a big problem in Brazil these days about the decline of the industry. More or less the same discussion that it's happening in the United States, how these traditional industries in manufacturing can somehow deal with this increasing global competition. And of course, that a big part of it comes from China.
Haibin Niu, back in 2015, President Xi Jinping set out some ambitious goals for China's relationship with Latin America. He was talking about $250 billion a year in direct investment. If we look at that, what was that, 3 years ago? Where does that stand right now? What kind of progress has been made?
I think a lot of things have been done to deepen the investment relationship. China has diversified its investment profile in the region quite a lot. Its investment has covered a lot of areas, from the energy sector to the renewable energy sector and the infrastructure, manufacturing sector, service sector, financial sector. So China has done a lot of work to do that. Of course, there from the proposal was raised, there were many things happened in the region. The region has just experienced 2 years recession, and also the world economy has experienced a lot of instability, like the trade protectionism, the deglobalization. So I think there are many challenges also facing both sides to achieve that investment goal.
Okay, we are going to have to take a break right now. Coming up, natural resources dominate Latin American exports to China. We'll look at new markets opening up in the face of a trade war. That's coming up next. You're watching The Heat.